Starduster, the story of Captain Willis Miller and the brave men who served under him during World War II on the B-24 Liberated Bomber called Starduster. Today we find Miller some 60 years after the war on the set of the movie Beautiful Dreamer, a feature film based on men like Miller and his brave crew.
Willis L. Miller, 0760649, captain, pilot of the plane. Thank you.
Jim Cassidy, 0767995. I too was a pilot. I was his co-pilot who kept him honest.
President Hoover once said, "Older men declare war, but it is the youth who must fight and die."
I was 19 when I went in, and I wanted to go through cadets, which I was able to do, and become a pilot in the process, and a second lieutenant at Stockton. And I was flying fighters at that time, sent to Albuquerque, New Mexico, and told that I was going to fly B-24s.
I think I'm the older survivor on this crew. Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I was...
Must have been at least 23, Jim.
Yeah, I was at 23, I think, something like that.
The colonel came in with 17 others and informed us we were going to fly B-24s. Asked him, what is a B-24? And the colonel would never talk to me after that.
Nearly 11,000 B-24s were built. They quickly gained a distinguished war record in the Pacific, African, Middle Eastern, and European theaters, where Miller and his crew were assigned.
And it was not a real good experience at first, but it was not easy to fly it. The first time that some pilots flew off in front of me, they were killed.
It turns out Cassidy was new to the Liberator as well.
When I met Willis, I had never been in a B-24 before. He taught me how to fly one.
Originally, crews were required to fly 25 missions, but with the attrition rate at an alarming 50%, that quickly changed.
What we did with B-24s, the 17s earlier only flew 25, but then later they increased it and we were supposed to fly 30.
Miller and his crew defied the odds on each and every mission.
We did 30. We almost got killed in 3 of them.
We're going down! Get everyone out of here!
The B-24 was created for a very specific purpose.
It was first built in San Diego, and they wanted a plane that could fly faster and carry heavier bombs.
Miller and his B-24 crew flew with the 392nd Bomb Group, 577th Squadron, and later the 579th Squadron out of Wendling, England. Their mission took them deep into enemy territory.
They had designated us going to northern sections of Germany, where they felt we could damage it more that way. But it was only because of the men that we had, who were all good men, did well, and we were able to get through.
Radio Man, Harold, Hal Hagopian, Technical Sergeant,
We had a great crew, there's no question about that.
All good men.
But we had, people from all walks of life. And that makes it very interesting because you had the comics, you had those that took the job seriously. And like our co-pilot didn't take it very seriously. He kept the most of the crew laughing.
Elevators. Elevators check.
Every man had a job to do and did it to the best of his ability.
Props are good. Check. Here we go.
My job, of course, is, today's vernacular, call us the communicators. But back in the old days, it was called the old radio operator. As an 18-year-old or an 18-and-a-half-year-old, you'll find that young men have a tendency to look forward to adventure. So for me, it was the big adventure. And I sort of had that frame of mind through, most of the missions.
When asked how safe they felt while flying in the B-24, Cassidy responds.
Well, you depended upon the guys behind our 50 calibers.
Yeah.
That's all he could do, and they were pretty good.
Yeah.
They had to put their head all the way out the side, which was so cold, and fire. And they had one gun that they could use to fire. And it was not easy for them to do that.
There's only, maybe 50, 60, 70 degrees below zero.
Yep.
Some places.
Yes.
And these guys were
around
out
60,
in the
70
open.
degrees.
They had their oxygen masks on. But even with them on, they had to keep massaging them because they would freeze up on them.
To give you an indication how cold it gets, in one of the missions, my oxygen mask just froze. It was solid ice, and what typically happens, you get a shortage of oxygen, you go into a state of anoxia. You sort of pass out. And fortunately, Willis makes a check of every crew member every 15 minutes. And one of those checks, I didn't respond. So he had one of the waist gunners, which was Nathan Hedges,
Go check out.
open the door, and he saw me sitting there, but he had 50 caliber spent shells, and he would be throwing those shells at me to try to wake me up. And of course I didn't respond. He finally came in there, pulled the mask off my face, put me on 100% oxygen, and I finally revived after a few minutes.
As routine as the conditions had become, the men never got used to them. Each run was an adventure and one step closer to the 30th and final mission.
Except when we got towards the tail end, then you could begin to realize that there's only a few more to go, but you may never get there.
One such ill-fated mission nearly became their last.
Well, first of all, you get over the shock of being briefed on where you're going to go. Then we'd go out and inspect the plane. And you really inspected it. And a lot of times when we got out there, they were loading bombs. But Willis and I would really go over the things as best we could to make sure everything was where it belonged or close to it. And we had double-checked the crew's equipment as they got on board to make sure they had the parachutes were this and this and this, and the jackets that they wore in case we had to ditch. And it was just, and then I think the tough part was after we got that finished, we had to wait. We had to wait because we had a certain time that we had to take off. And of course, we were always ready way ahead of time for that. And to me, that was the toughest part, you know, just waiting.
The General Capt, was the one that came up to me and said, "You're not going to be the lead pilot." And I said, "General, I don't want to be the lead pilot. That's who they're shooting at all the time."
Being a lead ship, it was my job to, as a communicator, to provide what we call control point messages. And there was certain cities or towns, you know, as we go into the target, and that was to advise the fighter operations so they could coordinate escort at different points of the mission. And they had, you know, several, you know, control points.
Bombs away.
It was not a nice situation when we're dropping bombs on people. We know they're getting killed, and they were trying to kill us.
Walt Whitman wrote, "My enemy is dead. A man as divine as myself is dead." Miller and his crew tried not to think about death, but it was impossible to ignore.
When I went to primary, there was a colonel there that lined us up, and I'd never been in an airplane in my life. And he said, "I'm going to tell you, gentlemen, how to win a war." He says, "It's simple. You kill more of them than they kill of you, and you kill them first. And our job is to win this." And I never forgot that approach, never.
That was Nathan Hedges' brother. He was flying a P-51 fighter, and we found out that he was providing escort. So they heard about it down in headquarters in London, and they came up with a program where little brother was protecting big brother being the B-24, and the little brother being the P-51. So they made a recording, they set up a program, and I believe they had that as part of a program called Cavalcade of America back in those days.
Sometimes in the thick clouds and dark of night, it became almost impossible to know where everybody was at all times.
We had an old plane. The group went away and left us, and we got hit with a Navy from Peenemünde. That's a Navy plane in Germany, on the north side. And we were hit so bad that I couldn't keep the plane going. I lost 2 engines.
The bombardier was hit pretty badly.
I'm hit!
I had to go forward and provide first aid.
Jim actually kept hitting me, so I was unconscious at the same time that Jack Crane, our bombardier, had been very seriously hit. And I was not with things at the time, and Jim kept hitting the back of my head, where I finally came to, and then tried to get the plane under control.
We're going down! Get everyone out of here!
I'm glad I whacked him because I didn't have the strength and probably not the skill that he had to save that aircraft. And it took both of us to overpower that thing and get it out. And hadn't been for him, we never made it.
But at that time, I had already told the crew to bail. And the reason they didn't bail is that they said it was spinning so fast that they couldn't get out.
The one problem that Jack, and he had dropped salvoed the bombs at that time, but he wasn't, after he got wounded, he was still trying to get back to his bomb site to drop the bombs, even though they had already been released. But, you know, being wounded, all he had in his mind was to salvo those bombs. And I managed to, you know, get to him and provide first aid. And I gave him a shot of morphine, you know, to ease the pain.
We were at 16,000 feet at that time. We had come down from around 30,000 feet when we were hit. And I actually thought Jack Crane was dead. And it's only because of Hal getting back up in there and helping him and putting on Novocaine to try to help Jack stay alive. And I lost 2 engines. And so I just made a turn, hoping that we could get back through the area. But we finally kept it going. Jim kept watching all the time. And finally he said, I see some islands down below us.
We had to sort of, you know, decide whether we were going to ditch in the channel or, you know, try to make it to the coast.
But it was so dark at that time of night that we really didn't know where we were going. We knew where we wanted to go. But finally it turned out to be the Scotch Islands. But we did then able to see what the channel looked like, came in, and I couldn't meet the crash landing location. The aileron was so damaged that I couldn't do that. So I saw some lights up ahead, and I just went into the lights, and I only had about 150, 200 feet altitude at that time.
And he thought he was a fighter pilot again, and he racked that airplane around
and dropped into the runway and just let it run.
Amazingly, there were no fatalities that day, although First Lieutenant Crane was badly injured. Like thousands of other young Americans called to serve their country, Miller and his crew did not see themselves as heroes, but felt it was their duty to protect and preserve the American way of life.
We're just young Americans and doing the best job we could.
When asked how the B-24 Liberator got its name, co-pilot Cassidy responds,
And I found a sergeant on the base there that I think it was from the film industry, but I saw him doing names on other ships. So I just gave him the name Starduster, and I said, can you do something that will reflect the name? Because all the guys thought that was a good name, and he came up with the artwork on it, and that's how that happened.
We were about to be drafted, you know, like every 18-year-old back in those days. So there was 6 of us. We decided to sign up, which would then give us a choice of what branch of service that we wanted to go into.
I was offered a plane of my own several times, and I turned it down. And they said, why? I said, I have a plane. I have a crew. I don't need another crew or another plane.
After flying their final mission over 60 years ago, Miller and his crew have had several reunions. They will never forget the war or each other.
It was the largest bomber built at the time and the hardest one to fly. Glad to see the 30th mission come through.